Hi there. In this game we see an amazing clash. Rashid Nezhmetdinov playing against Mikhail Tal. So 1957 USSR Championship round 6. So e4 from Nezhmetdinov. Tal plays a French defence. His results with the French are not so good as the Sicilian defence. We have d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4, e5, c5, and now bishop d2. So the usual winnower is more theoretical, and yeah, white should have a small edge in theory, but this is quite a nice surprise move, bishop d2. We have knight e7, a3. Here, if knight b5, black can just take on d2 and castle. There isn't a concern about knight d6. That's okay. Black can accept a knight on d6. Black's going to get good play. It's an even position. If white plays f4 instead of the immediate knight d6 here, then that's also even. So Nezhmetdinov plays a3 actually. Bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3. So he's avoided having doubled pawns. We have now b4. Queen g4 is also another move, but knight f5 looks okay to defend g7. This position h5 to try and kick the queen away. And black's actually getting a decent enough game here after queen g5. The bishop has neglected that g5 square. So okay, it's still a small edge for white, but it's not much. But okay, so b4, interesting. Queen c7, knight f3, knight d7. Perhaps a small inaccuracy actually, knight d7. C takes b4. This position, black could play a5. And one of the points is bishop d6, queen c3 check, and knight f5. This is going to be very nice for black. Black's going to take out a centre pawn with a big advantage. So let's look at that again. So bishop d6 allowing queen c3 is a bad idea. If the bishop has to go back to d2, black plays that strategic bishop exchange, bishop a6, classic strategic bishop exchange, and it should be just even. Black should be fine here. So that is like a classic strategic operation in the French defense, which would have been initiated with c takes b4. I mean, it's hitting the bishop on c3. There's no a takes because of queen takes c3 check. So that is like forcing moves at the service of strategy as well. So knight d7 is actually a bit of an inaccuracy, it seems. Bishop e2, knight c6, and a further bit of an inaccuracy. C takes d4 here. Tal was leading the tournament, to be fair. Maybe he was a bit overconfident in this game. But c takes d4 instead is, in a way, more French defense style. This position, that c-file pressure is kind of annoying. Is white going to lose this pawn? I mean, where's the compensation? It's not too much compensation. There is an idea of taking out f5 and putting a knight on d4. Black could keep the position alive with d4 to open up this bishop. And it should end up being an even position. This situation ends up being an even position. Black's getting enough play. The pieces are kind of active. It's not such a bad bishop on b7. So yes, c takes d4. If bishop takes d4 here, knight g6, both sides castle. Let's take this scenario. If black ever takes on e5, this is c4 will be trying to draw actually. Knight takes c4, white could take on c4, and guess what to try and draw? Yeah, bishop takes g7 would enable a perpetual check as example. So anyway, c takes d4 does seem the way to go, but knight c6 was played. Both sides castle. Trying to win a pawn here is a bad idea. Instead of black castling, knight takes d4 with the king in the centre. Knight b5 hits the queen, protects the bishop. And here f4 and then f5. This will be a very strong attack after bishop h5 check, bishop g4. King's actually prevented from castling. In the case of knight d takes e5 here, f4, knight b5, and actually bishop takes g7, preventing black from castling is very strong for white. So sensible to castle. B takes, D takes c5. knight c takes e5 here. If knight takes c5, that's actually seems plausible. There's queen b6 to the rescue here. And here a5 comes in handy. This position should be, you know, black could even take out e5. This position should be even. So that's plausible, knight takes c5. But we have knight c takes e5, knight takes, queen d4, f6, f4, knight c6, queen e3. Now rook d8, this is a slight inaccuracy. For everything it seems d4. Better would have been knight e7. So the thing is here, if we look at this position with rook a to b1, bishop d7, black has a solid enough position. It should be about even. But we have rook d8 with an ambitious idea. Tal was leading the tournament. He wants to construct a centre. But white has this bishop pair. Is it good to construct this centre in this situation? We have rook a d1, and now this makes things worse, e5. Bishop d7 here, again, seems much safer than trying to construct a centre. The problem with constructing a centre, it could be undermined, and the pieces could be much better after. This situation, where black's not going for e5, is actually plausible to play like this. You know, for example, like this. If f5 ever, knight e5, you know, black's got resources here to be even. So basically, bishop d7 is playing it safe. You know, this is a way of playing it safe. But Tal, perhaps because he's leading the tournament, plays it quite ambitiously, constructing the centre with the black pieces. F takes, we have f takes, slightly worse again. Knight takes here, not constructing a full centre. Bishop d4, bishop e6. This situation is going to be an advantage for white, though. It is an advantage for white with that bishop here. And this bishop's not great on e6. But f takes is slightly worse. Now this is a powerful move which starts to underline a lot of problems in the black position. Guess what Nezhmetdinov plays? Kind of Nimzo Indian style move, bishop b5. Putting pressure on dark squares. We have bishop b7. So the funny thing is, it works tactically after d4. We can do one of two things for advantage of d4. Can you see one or both of them? One for 100 points, both for 200 points. What is a good move here for white if d4 had been played? So d4 wasn't played, bishop b7 was played. But what if d4 was played? What would you play? Well, queen e4 is a great move. If d takes, we can play queen takes c6. The queen's trying to look after the rook. It's a disaster. You know, queen takes, we take the rook and we're mating. So that's a really powerful move. And yes, we've also got other interesting ideas here after queen e4. If this bishop isn't taken, we've got other ideas like bishop c4 check and rook f7 as well. And we could even play bishop c4 check immediately, queen e4. So d takes here, though. We don't need rook f7 hands a rook. We could play queen takes c6 here. And this is absolutely winning for white. Doesn't matter about queen takes d1. We're just winning here. Okay. So yes, d4 is out of the question, it seems. So bishop b7 is played. Queen g3. Look at this dark square pressure. So on e5, on g7. Anytime d4, there's bishop c4 check and rook f7. If white had played, there was a trap to avoid here. What would be a terrible mistake, do you think, for white to play? Yeah, bishop takes c6 would be a terrible mistake. Black doesn't routinely just play queen takes c6 here, allowing e5 to drop. There's better here. Black just plays d4. And now queen takes c6. The queen's looking at g2, so we can't take on e5. This position, c5 dropping, but that's getting a big advantage. So that is out of the question, bishop takes c6. This move keeps the pressure on, queen g3, on the dark squares. Black's kind of clinging on to that centre. It's been overestimated. Rook d7. The overestimation itself is in a wider context, doing really great in the tournament. Mikhail Tal was doing really great in the tournament. So it's interesting to see how overestimation issues can come in psychologically in human chess. So, okay, we have rook f2. Very powerful waiting move. So sometimes it means if black ever takes on c5, it's not check. Another reason for it, rook's doubling is useful. We have rook e8. So if d4, actually, you know what? We can just double the rooks. So this point is revealed. Check, and then mating. If a6, taking, we can actually just take on e5. And note that queen takes c5 is not check. And if queen takes c5 is not check here, queen e6 check, picking up the rook. So lovely move, rook f2. Quite but brilliant. Rook e8, h3, bishop a8. If d4 here, just doubling the rooks here is still powerful. So bishop c4 check will be, involved in a back row mate with rook f8. So let's imagine after rook d f1, queen b8, still play bishop c4 check. And this position, bishop d2, with rook f7 coming. This is super strong. Rook takes e7, bishop takes g8, bishop takes e7, queen b3 check is winning. Can you see the tactic here for 10 points? What does white play here? Yeah, queen takes b7, the back row is weak. So, okay, so bishop a8 is tried. We have now an idea, Tal has an idea that sometimes maybe, he can attack this bishop. That idea is removed, theoretically, bishop a4. And also adding the idea of bishop b3 as well to white's position. Bishop b7, king h1, maybe slight inaccuracy, just building on the f file, doubling the rooks. Seems strong. Anytime d4, bishop b3 check, it's crashing through basically. Obviously d4 is not the greatest there. But king h1, we have bishop a8, rook f5. Here again, just doubling is powerful. If e4, queen g4, we don't need to exchange off queens. This position, rook f6, look at the pressure on the queen side as well on c6. Here, queen f5, look at the pressure now on black's position. It's formidable. Black dare not take here on f6. This is too much, this diagonal and the weakening of the king generally is too much. So let's imagine this, queen g5. We're going to be making progress with a move like rook f7 and taking out g7, check, 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 check. It's going to lead to a mate sequence basically. That's checkmate, the knight's pinned to the king. So anyway, so rook f5 was played though. Yeah, doubling rooks was really quite powerful as well. e4, this offers centre pawn, but with it the diagonals open up for the bishop. If queen c8 instead, white can just take on e5. Yeah, there is a point in this Nezhmetdinov's rook f5. Just take out the centre pawn. And this position, if queen takes, bishop takes e8, queen takes e5, queen takes e5, rook takes e5, bishop a4 is actually a big advantage for white. There, even though it's only like one pawn up, it's still a big advantage. As example, if we look at this again, if knight takes e5, rook takes e5 is also nice for white. So anyway, e4 is tried. Black's position is crumbling after the queens come off, funny enough, because now after rook f takes d5, this bishop can come to b3, among other things. e3, rook d7, e2 going straight into a mate in 4. If rook takes d7, rook takes d7, e2, bishop b3 check, and bishop takes g7 is mate. And, if king h8, bishop takes g7 is mate. So instead of e2, what about, say, rook e7, check, and we can come back here, and let's say e2, this position is still going to be very good for white. We can take out this pawn. We've totally undermined black's centre. Winning position. So anyway, e2 just goes straight into a mate in 4. Tal was short on time at this stage. You know, less than, just only a few minutes. So apparently bishop b3 check. We have rook e6 just trying to delay the immediate mate. If king f8, bishop takes g7 is checkmate, or king h8, bishop takes g7 is checkmate. This is just the delay of a checkmate. Bishop takes e6 check. King f8, bishop takes g7, ending the game. If king e8, bishop f7 is checkmate. So yes, a remarkable game. I covered this game actually on YouTube many years ago, more than 10 years ago. So I had an interest in Nezhmetdinov back then. Brilliant player. I found his games absolutely fascinating. Of course, Mikhail Tal's attacking games are also fascinating. And he was also for a while, you know, apparently Mikhail Tal's trainer for the match against Botvinnik. You know, Nezhmetdinov became Mikhail Tal's trainer. So they were very good friends. Very interesting, dynamic attacking chess styles. It's just on this occasion, Mikhail Tal should perhaps have played more in French defense style at various early stages of this particular game. Going for that centre, yeah, the centre was fragile, as it was proven by Nezhmetdinov. So a fascinating encounter. I hope you got some interesting points from this game. And maybe if we put a label in this game, a mistake label fundamentally, I think it's overestimating having a central pawn centre, especially when the opponent has a dangerous bishop pair lurking. Okay, thanks so much. All comments, questions, likes and subscribes, really appreciated. Thanks so much.